Good afternoon. This is Nikolaidis. I'm a professor at the School of Environmental Engineering at the Technical University of Crete. And I want to thank the Water Resources Agency for inviting me to be part of the International Water Week. Today, I want to discuss with you some of the challenges that we have to face when we are implementing nature-based solutions at different scales. During the past couple of decades, we have experienced a tremendous number of physical disasters, natural disasters, floods, fires, droughts all over the earth. This year, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and the World Meteorological Organization have summarized the impacts of climate change that we are facing now, we are experiencing now, and we are going to experience in the future. If we want to put a few bullets on these impacts, we can say that the number of climate-related disasters has tripled in the past 30 years. The rate of global sea level rise between the decade of 2006 to 2016 was 2.5 times faster than it was in all the last century. More than 20 million people a year are forced from their homes by climate change. And finally, UNEP estimates that the cost for the adaptation to climate change for the developing countries will be about 140 to 300 billion per year by 2030. The European Union believes that we can adapt and mitigate the impacts of climate change using nature-based solutions. And in fact, the vision of EU is to become a global leader in nature-based solutions. The definition of nature-based solutions that the EU has given is that these are living solutions inspired and supported by nature that simultaneously provide environmental, social, economic benefits and help to build resilience. These are solutions that bring more nature and natural features and processes into cities, landscapes, and seascapes through locally adapted, resource-efficient, and systemic intervention. And here, for instance, if we are applying nature-based solutions in cities, we can have both economic benefits, such as faster property sales, property prices, value of land, faster planning permissions, and so forth, and social and environmental benefits, such as physical and mental health, well-being, reduced flood damage, cleaner water, and so forth. NBS is an umbrella concept of established approaches that have been used in the past 30 to 40 years. These approaches, these established approaches, can be overlapping a lot of times. And for instance, climate adaptation approaches, ecosystem-based adaptation, ecosystem-based management, ecosystem-based mitigation, ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, ecological engineering, ecological restoration. All of these are approaches that they have common themes, and they are under the umbrella of nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions can address a lot of challenges, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals. Some of the challenges is climate mitigation and adaptation, water management, coastal resilience, green space management, urban regeneration, public health and well-being, and so forth. This is not, NBS is not a new concept. It has evolved over the past 20 years. And while it is being formulated and conceptualized until 2015, then the European Union has established a significant funding program through Horizon 2020 in order to address issues of urban resilience and risk management, socioeconomic and environmental outcomes, climate change adaptation and mitigation, sustainable development, and biodiversity. And it has incorporated in this concept of NBS in European policies, that it is the European Green Deal, in strategies like the bioeconomy, biodiversity, EU forest strategy, and so forth, and the directives that can be like the Habitats and Birds Directive, the Flood Directive, the Water Framework Directive, the Common Agricultural Policy, and so forth. In addition, global policies have incorporated also concepts of NBS. So NBS is a horizontal concept that has been applied to a lot of global and EU-related policies. However, there are many challenges that we have to overcome for a successful implementation and upscaling of NBS. By definition, nature-based solutions are inherently complex and uncertain. In addition, the external events that are the NBS drivers are also uncertain. So the NBS design should be dynamic and highly complex in context, and the process should be open and transparent. In addition, we have co-benefits that may be only indirectly related to the goals of the life cycle costs, and that needs to be considered for the business case of, and when we try to establish the business case of NBS. So if we want to look into a systemic approach of NBS with both the utilities and the environmental impacts, here in this diagram, we need to establish the life cycle of NBS, and the life cycle of NBS takes care of both the land use, energy, and natural resources that are input to NBS. We need to take under consideration the NBS from the raw material all the way to the installation, use, operation, and maintenance to the end of life treatment. And at the same time, we need to take under consideration the ecosystem services. And here is a list of the benefits: the enhancing biodiversity, as well as the process waste, such as the emissions to air, water, and so forth. So all of this needs to be part of the life cycle of NBS. And to that, we need to try to quantify the total cost, both to public and private costs, and at the same time, the public and private benefits. In these costs, we need to incorporate the total value of economic benefits from the benefits, the ecosystem services that NBS provides. And at the same time, we need to look into the regulation and to develop policy instruments in order to provide economic incentive and payments for environmental services dealing with NBS. So by taking under consideration the life cycle analysis, the benefits, the economics, and the evaluation of the ecosystem services that are incorporated into the total cost and benefits of the NBS, as well as policy instruments to favor NBS, then we will be able to have a full picture of the impacts of NBS compared to mainstream gray solutions. Of course, the implementation of NBS requires adaptive management. So both in the planning stage as well as the implementation stage, we need to have feedback loops where in the planning stage, we outline the problem, involve the stakeholders, scoping the analysis, develop alternatives. We conduct a preliminary assessment, and then depending on the outcome of this assessment with respect to the alternatives, we can go back and develop new alternatives and so forth. When we are ready for the implementation stage, we need to do the detailed design assessment, the business case and financing implementation, and very important, the monitoring. And the monitoring could provide the feedback to the detailed design. If we are not meeting the objectives of the project and the benefits that we want from the NBS, we need to adapt the project, and so we will be able to achieve it. We have at the same time a lot of technical barriers, and I'm going to list a number of those, as well as knowledge gaps. So when we are talking about technical barriers, we are talking about technically feasible solutions appropriate for addressing multiple challenges are limited and underdeveloped. We have lack of sufficient guidance and protocols and technical support. Materials for NBS sometimes might not be always environmental friendly. Lack of ready to use and easy to install technical products. Sometimes we could use expensive technologies, but the cross-section of the technical and market spheres, they are not easily to adapt. Restrictions of the monitoring methodologies to link NBS impacts across spatial scales. Poor availability of data sets to evaluate NBS. Monitoring approaches, both in terms of quality and accuracy, are lacking. Quantification of the impacts of heat and drought on NBS and their impact to continue to provide services. Of course, when we are talking about the monitoring approaches, I have to say that the European Union just developed a handbook with KPIs, key performance indicators that can be used for the monitoring of the different projects that we have of NBS. When we are talking about knowledge gaps, we are talking about lack of deep understanding among the interdisciplinary key actors. So we don't have the same understanding, we cannot talk the same language. Lack of appropriate training of planners, developers, and construction professionals. Lack of interdisciplinary skilled personnel to do actually the project. Absent in-depth stakeholder mapping and outreach. We need to establish a holistic framework for the assessment of NBS impacts. Again, the first step has been made with the different KPIs. However, these KPIs and this framework needs to be applied to a lot of different projects, so we will be able to assess the framework and see if this is working well. And of course, we don't have real maintenance cost data. There is a lack of evidence regarding the quantitative benefits of NBS, lack of knowledge regarding the impacts of NBS on health and well-being, insufficient or absent follow-up monitoring of implemented NBS that impedes the evaluation of the NBS effectiveness, uncertainty on long-term effects, interdisciplinary methods and research designs to monitor synergies and trade-off within and across challenges. These are all knowledge gaps. However, there is hope. The European Union has funded more than 300 million of knowledge generation project. This is a very short, small list of the projects. There are many more projects that they have been already funded, and it was very hard to put in this diagram. And these projects have case studies, many case studies, and they are going to continue with the evaluation of the impact of NBS. And so a lot of these knowledge gaps are going to start being filled. However, the question is, how is an NBS initiated? How can we get started? Last year, I discussed with you and I presented my own experience that we have here in Crete in terms of restoring the riparian forest and creating flood protection of the riparian area of Kiliaris River Basin. And last year, I mentioned that I strongly believe that one needs to have a vision for the whole area of where this area needs to go, because this vision is going to act as a driver to overcome the potential barriers and enhance the social acceptability of the project. In this case, the vision was created 15 years ago. And during these 15 years, we were able to keep on pushing, design the project, have social acceptability. Now we are at the phase where the project has been accepted, and we are in the final stage of approval, and we will be looking into the financial component and financing and building the project, implementing the project. So at least more than 15 years have passed throughout this process. So it is a long term in order to implement successfully nature-based solutions. To give you a couple of other examples, here is a case study of the Copenhagen Cloudburst management plan. In 2011, in the summer of 2011, Copenhagen, in the 2nd of July, had 150 millimeters of rain that fall in 2 hours. It was a cloudburst that created significant flooding. They created a toolbox of approaches of nature-based solutions and approaches that can change from the traditional sewage and urban runoff system. So basically here is they created a blue-green city. They changed the streets into both having green areas, and as part of these green areas, they were able to create underground storages of water. And this is an example of a green street, and here is an example of what they call an urban canal. And you can see how the street will be looking during the normal time, during the rain event, and during the cloudburst, where part of the street will be flooded. However, there are going to be areas of the street that they are going to be dry for people to be able to walk. This was not an easy process for Copenhagen. Since 2011, they created the master plan options, the socioeconomic cost and benefits. They had the vision was accepted. They had political approval. They had expert reviews, public consultation, workshops. They found test pilot areas. They applied these areas. So, I mean, this thing is continuing until this whole system is going to be implemented. So it's a long haul process. Similar is the issue, another case study, which is in Seoul, the Cheon River. And here we can see from the 20s to 40s, it was an open river. In the 50s, it was closed. And then since then, we had the urban development. And then again, in the 90s and 2000, the motivation was to open up the river and create nature-based solutions. Because they wanted to create nature and human-centered city space. They wanted to rebuild Seoul's 600-year-old historical and cultural heritage. And that included the historic bridges, the Lantern Festival, and so forth. And they wanted to create an economic revitalization of the downtown area. And of course, the impact, you can see the difference between they have been extremely successful, and they had many co-benefits of this particular application. So just to summarize, and this is from the Think Nature Handbook, the key elements and drivers for the successful practices in the implementation and upscaling of NBS. Here we are including all of these key elements. I'm not going to read all of those, but this is a kind of a very nice mind map that you can include, where you need to identify and prioritize the challenges and goals. You need to make optimal use of available knowledge, technical solutions, and technologies. You need to have citizen participation for better comprehension of risk and conflict effects, adaptability to the continuous ecological, economic, and social challenges, flexibility when it comes to reevaluation of goals and proposed actions. So from the conception and evaluation to planning and implementation, you need to take under consideration all of these aspects in order to be able to have a successful implementation of NBS. Now, once you have a successful implementation of NBS, you are contributing to the building of the knowledge base, and then eventually of the transferability and replication of NBS in other areas. So just to conclude this presentation, I think that it is important that we fully understand the extent of the multidimensional impacts of the problem at hand before we start implementing nature-based solutions. It is extremely important we create a vision. We needed to imagine a transformative change. We need to see the big picture. This vision is going to be the one that it is going to be able to have buy-ins. When we involve this case, the key stakeholders, then we will have the buy-in of the vision, and that will help in terms of the long-term implementation and monitoring of the nature-based solution. And if we have this vision, then we are ready to start the journey, but it is going to be long, and we need to persevere. Thank you very much again for the invitation and for having me here.